mics for a second.
Are we on Twitch now?
Yes.
Welcome to Voyage of the Geek for another week, the 19th of April 2018. Joining me as always, Dan Miller.
Hello, hello.
Rick Legato.
Hola.
And coming back to the panel, Tony Oakton.
Hi.
And I'm going to hand over the announcing of this particular movie to the person that chose it for the evening, our regular swords and sorcerer expert and of all things fantasy narrative. Rick, will you please let us put us out of our misery as to what we are having a look at tonight?
Red Sonja.
The classic 1985 fantasy film.
And technically the third in the Conan trilogy.
Is it?
Indeed.
Yes.
Is it actually technically, or is
Yes.
it just kind of accidentally technically?
No, they Dino De Laurentiis saw it as the third.
And I think some of them probably hedged their bets a little bit. I think they withheld until it became a bit of a cult thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they let it into the family, shall we say, because they were a little reluctant as to, and that explains why Conan is not Conan in this film.
Because the Robert E. Howard estate back then used to hold the IP in a really strange way.
Yeah.
And my understanding is they used to allow, rather than just hand over the IP for a certain amount, they used to hand over pieces of it. And, and so you could afford to grab, this character and that place name, and you paid for each individual bit.
Okay.
Which is why the Conan films have some bits that are canon.
Yep.
And obviously the producers have gone, well, we won't buy that or that. They basically made every individual little character, place name, its own price. So you would basically piecemeal. And I'd say they decided that, for whatever reason, that it wasn't worth buying Conan for this film. So they just made up a non-canon character for Arnold.
Wasn't there something similar about the X-Men unreleased, the unreleased Fantastic Four movie where the rights, you could buy the rights for the Fantastic Four, but there was extra rights for the bad guys.
Yeah, there might have been. I remember something.
And that's why we had the Mole Man or something like that, because they couldn't really afford to...
A good one.
Well, they had Doom, but who was part of the rights, because he's like their arch nemesis and part of their origin story. But to get anyone else, they had to pay top dollar, which they didn't have. So
I'd like to know more about that, whether people sell it as a, piecemeal. You can have Conan's left arm and you can buy his right foot, or whether some other people just say, it's a job lot, give me $20,000 and you can have everything.
That's normally what's done now.
Yeah.
And the Robert E. Howard estate was notoriously difficult to deal with.
yeah,
And that's why you didn't get a lot of Conan products until, I think, late 90s, when it changed over. And then you got some normal people running the IP.
yeah. There was a glut early
and then-
sort of early to mid '80s, and then it went away. Like we didn't really have much.
Because people just didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And now, and since then you ended up with Conan cards, Conan role-playing games, Conan computer games.
Well, the comics are huge.
The comics have always been there. I'm a collector.
Yeah. Well, Red Sonja comics are huge.
Yeah.
A lot of the artwork I found was of the Red Sonja comics.
You're probably doing yourself a bit of a disservice if you're chopping up your own IP into small pieces and selling off little bits. You really do want to push the whole thing as a kind of a big world package.
Yeah.
you know, that
And just
people can move
find-
around in.
Find pricier buyers, don't you know, if you want to smorgasbord it out. All right, what we normally do is discuss how we found the movie, like where and when was it that you first saw it, and we'll start as a returning member of the team. Tony, where would you like to start? Did you see it originally in its original run?
No.
So
Saw it
yesterday was your...
This afternoon.
This afternoon is your first viewing.
You're
Although I did
fresh.
see the original Conan, I think, when it came out. I've seen it on television.
Mhm.
Didn't see it in the cinema.
Hmm.
I wasn't hugely.
Are you big on the genre,
No.
the swords and sorcery genre? It's good. You're going to offer a nice because you're very big on it.
Yep.
Tony can take it or leave it,
Yeah.
and I'm sort of in the middle. There's some I like, some I don't like, but I won't put up with ones I don't like because I have such a great passion for it, which you will tend to do if you're really passionate about a genre. You'll put up with a little bit of
Extra.
yeah. So, how did you find it?
It was better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be terrible. But, you know, before I went on, I try not to do this, but I couldn't help but sneak a look at Rotten Tomatoes, and I think they gave it 18%.
Yep.
IMB gave it 50%.
Yep.
And I think IMB is probably close to mine. I would say 50% is a rating. I think it's okay. It was quite a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bad film.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought it would. As one of the reviewers said, there's more ham than you'd find in an Italian delicatessen. And
Yeah. Yeah.
but
And a heavy Italian hand in the film.
Mm.
yeah.
One thing I found, if you look up the production company, there's two main key production companies that produce this film. One was the De Laurentiis company, and another one.
It's Canal Studios.
No, there's a lot that's involved. Most of those are distribution, but the two main production companies was De Laurentiis, and then I'll bring it up. I've got to show you. And if you try to link to it on IMDb, it'll come up with a splash screen saying, well, you need to buy the IMDb Pro subscription to get that type of information. And it usually does when you want to dive deep and want to have a look at production company information. But what they do is they bring up a splash screen over the top of the actual data itself. And if you use your finger on an iPad, you can actually displace the splash screen and see what they've done. The very top film on their list blew me away a little bit. Flash Gordon.
That kind of makes sense,
Yeah,
actually.
And that's what I thought as well.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I thought as well. And there were some interesting ones on that list. And I'll bring it up towards the end of the show. We'll have a look at some of the other stuff that they did. Because you've never probably heard of this particular production house. And we're talking about production house as in Star Wars is done by Lucasfilm. But realistically, it's 20th Century Fox, and then now it's Disney. Most people consider it a Disney franchise, but it's not. It's the production house are the people that actually make the film, and then they hand it over to the people that finance the film, and that's usually the bigger house. So the people that made it, and it's chock-a-block full of spaghetti western personality or production personalities. The music was done by Sergio Leone, by Ennio Morricone, who did the Good, the Bad, the Ugly, the Fistful of Dollars. But every spaghetti western film of note was done by Ennio Morricone. Plus, he went on to do a lot of other major feature film. And we'll talk about the music. What about you? Did you see it? You would have seen it in its original run.
No, I discovered it while I was at uni in the early 90s. And boy, was I happy when I discovered it. It was up there with Hawk the Slayer, always being watched in my house.
And you saw it last week, the other week?
Today, actually.
And how did it stand up?
Good.
It was everything you remembered?
Yep, there was a bit in the beginning that I don't remember. And when I saw it, I was like,
Yeah. What was the bit?
The bit, it's her, I guess you could say, politically incorrect, a bit of homophobia. It's what starts the entire film. And actually, had Red Sonja just gone, yep, I'm flattered, but sorry, I don't swing that way, things would have gone a lot smoother for everyone.
Yeah.
But her homophobic reaction.
A violent reaction.
Violent reaction.
It was a violent reaction. She smashed a queen in the face
Yeah,
at the thought of it.
that's right.
And one has to wonder how many people died in the name of that, just that reaction. You're right. You're right. What about you, Dan?
I probably saw it like at 2:00 in the morning on Channel 7.
14 times.
Yeah, 14 times when the parents are all in bed, and it's like late movie extravaganza, or something like that.
Yep.
So yeah, I could barely remember it, but yeah, I probably saw it back in the day.
I would have came across this on a shelf of a video store in the late 80s when everybody had a video player in their lounge room, and that would have been sort of early 80s, everybody got the video player. But as we move towards late 80s, you're starting to exhaust the mainstay titles in the video shop. And you start to explore other areas of the video shop that you don't normally go near. And then it's all about the
how
covers.
we found it. That's pretty much
and when
what
you
we found.
see Arnie like that on the cover, you don't really see red Sonja, but yeah, she's scantily clad. Yeah, that could be pretty good. So Arnie, scantily clad chick with a big sword. Oh, that would have won me, and I would have watched it probably late 80s. It's exactly the movie I remembered. Exactly. It was in a period of cinema that was a bit weird for me, where massive dramatic music when not much is going on. I think there's a scene where she, and we'll discuss in more detail, but she goes across a chasm. The sister goes across a chasm, and she gets an arrow in the back, and Arnie catches her on the other side of the chasm and then lays her down under a tree. Well, the moment between when he catches her and lays her down, the crescendo of cinematic music is almost deafening, right? But then Arnie turns around 15 seconds later and has a fight and hacks 14 guys and chops a guy's head off. No music. And at that period in cinema, just watch the movie Moonraker, right? The 007 Moonraker with big jaws, the guy with the metal mouth. All of the fight sequences have no music. There's completely devoid of any sound effects other than scuff sounds where people are running around and these sorts of things. But there's no music and there's no crescendo. Cinema was doing weird things in that time, and this movie's got that written all over it. So it doesn't date well in that aspect of it. But apart from that, they spent their money here. It reminded me of Flash Gordon. The set pieces
Actually, if you think about it, Flash Gordon had pretty cool sets. This movie had pretty cool sets.
Yeah, and the matte paintings weren't too bad.
Yeah, I've made notes.
And the costumes as well were pretty epic in both movies.
Yeah, I think there's only one or two things in this film that let it down. Unfortunately, and we'll talk about this in more detail. Unfortunately, those one or two things are
the important things.
Large. Yeah, that's right. They put salt in the cake instead of sugar.
Yeah.
Right?
Just a teaspoon.
That's right. Whereas
Makes a difference.
There were other ingredients that they could have messed up and it wouldn't have been as bad. But these couple of ingredients that they didn't quite get right were enough to make it not age well and have some issues.
One of the things I noticed, I got these figures. The film cost, according to the figures I saw, was $6.9 million USD.
You might have to be a bit closer to the microphone.
6.9 million
Okay, right.
USD, which seems very reasonable actually for a film of this sort of scope, and it made 18 million.
I saw that in reverse.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I saw those figures. I thought it cost 17 estimated. That was on IMDb, but when you go to the box office Mojo, it only made 9. Something like that. So I don't know.
Maybe I'm wrong.
But they're not. It's.
I didn't have it down as a big disaster.
It had estimated.
Disaster.
It was. Oh no! Hang on. I clicked the button in Box Office Mojo where it can put it in today's figures, and in today's figures, if it had have released today, it would have been $17 or $18 million box office taking.
Okay.
Yeah, that made sense.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't a huge loser. No, not at all.
Would have made a whole bunch from VHS tapes, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And the fact that Arnie was in it would have been the big seller for them, I think.
Yeah. Because you had Conan 82, 84, and then this 85.
Yeah. In fact, a lot of the production crew came straight off Conan the Destroyer into this film.
Yeah.
And some of the actors as well. The Queen was...
No, she's from...
Oh, no, she's in the first Conan.
Yeah.
That's right. She was too.
And she was picked to be Red Sonja. Didn't want to do that.
That's right. Turned it down.
Yeah, turned it down and asked to be the evil queen instead.
Okay.
So, Schwarzenegger makes Conan the Barbarian, then he makes Destroyer, according to this list here. Then he makes one other movie, and then he makes Red Sonja.
And the other movie is Terminator. Yeah. And anything with Arnie in after Terminator is box office gold.
They're just rockets. Perhaps with one exception, immediately after the Terminator. But anyway.
There's a couple in there, and there's definitely some shockers before Conan.
I think somewhere I also read that, Schwarzenegger reckons it's his worst movie.
Film, yeah.
Which Conan or...
No, Red Sonja.
Sonja.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, and in this film I found he was not the Conan character. He was more of a statesman relative to the Conan character. And in fact, I think he says it. He's the high priest. He's a nobleman or something, like equivalent to a leader in some sort of culture.
Remember, and you'd know much better than me, but Conan's a king. He's not just like a sword whacking.
Conan becomes king. At the end of his life.
Okay.
He's a slave for most of the movie.
True.
Yeah. Eventually, well, not according to all the films, the canon's all over the place. But the canon stories, he becomes a king, eventually. And sort of retires from being an adventurer by being a king, basically.
All right, so what we normally do is we have a look at a film. We use the narrative of the film to drag us kicking and screaming from the beginning to the end.
Freudian slip there, I think, Dave.
And that way we sort of stop off along the way and talk about the things that stand out, whether they stand out for good or bad reasons, and they could be anything from acting, character, story, visual effects, anything. And so if you haven't seen the film, this is a massive spoiler alert. In fact, we should probably rename the show to
Spoiled Everything.
We spoil stuff. And we watch it so you don't have to. But yes.
We spoil it so you don't have to.
So as we work our way through, Dan likes to take us through our narrative beats. And we've got a writer on the panel tonight as well. So hopefully we can really have a good discussion about what a lot of people might not be fully aware of, which is the story and the lore and those. Because I'm certainly not. To me it was just a cinema experience. I think to people that get into the comics and stuff like that, there's more to it. There's a lot more layers to it, which might make it more interesting if someone does consider going and watching it again. So Dan, where do we start with this one?
The story starts with my story beat here called Horrible Conflagration. So we start with a big fat house on fire.
That's right. Someone built that house to burn that house.
They did.
Pretty good house to burn. It looked pretty good. There was a lot of... It looked yay oldie, and we never got to see it in any other scene other than the burning scene.
And then that shows us a poor maiden who's...
lying in the dirt.
Lying in the dirt, and she's got one smudge of stuff on her left cheek, which symbolises that she's had a horrible time.
She's unconscious.
She's looking a bit of a mess. And then she sees, and this is the quote that I made when I first saw it, the ghost of exposition.
The exposition in the first 10 minutes.
Yes.
Where the fairy godmother turns up and wakes her up by calling her name.
Yes.
And proceeds to then spend good 5 minutes telling her what just happened to her.
Yeah, what she already knows.
You feel like at any point Sonja's going to say, I know.
Yes.
I know they raped me. That's fresh. It's still a little raw.
Thank you very much.
Actually, we've jumped over the inciting incident that we mentioned before, which is the Queen making the advance, her turning it down.
Well, she finds that out by the fairy god exposition.
Look, I don't think that was the whole deal.
Because it's all flashback. It's all...
Okay, yeah, so there's a big flashback.
Well, she's the fairy godmother is the causing the flashback.
Yeah,
she's telling Sonja that this is what just happened to you.
That's right.
So I'm not sure what the inciting incident was, because I got the picture that old Queen What's-Her-Face was just being a bastard and was stealing everything from everybody and setting fire to everybody's houses and everything. Plus, she wanted to have a wicked way with Sonja.
Yep.
And that was all this big mess that...
I think the inciting incident was the death of the sister.
Maybe.
Until then, she was just fucking around with swords.
It is the inciting, technically.
Yeah.
From the story perspective.
But the setup to who Sonja is, because does she get superpowers from the exposition fairy?
Well, we've got to discuss this, because I think the exposition fairy says, you have to be super strong and really wonderful to Reap your vengeance, son. Whoever hurt you?
In a really, really pleasant, like, light-hearted voice.
And then she has a sword, this magic sword, and goes bing on her forehead.
Yeah.
But she never says, "I give you magic
Well,
powers."
she does say your sword arm will be unequal.
Yeah. Yeah, she does.
And then goes
and
ping.
in the synopsis, it talks about how basically she, because Sonja turned the queen down, the queen turned up and burnt down her house, massacred her family, and had her men rape her. Then the goddess wakes her up and grants her these powers of stamina and strength and skill.
Yeah.
That might be in the synopsis, but it's not in the movie.
Yeah, well,
Well, she
no
does.
one's perfect.
I know she at least says that your sword arm will have no equal.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that in a barbaric world, that's a pretty good gift. That's a
Yeah.
superpower.
Yeah.
All right.
Why did the goddess do this? Which goddess was it?
Yes.
I didn't really get
I
that from the
I
movie.
can't
at
remember
all.
her name.
Yeah.
It's just such.
Doesn't she
Well,
has some sort
form.
of goddess thing in the comic books? There's
Yeah.
a sort of patron god or
Yeah.
something that helps her out for some reason. But
Mm.
that wasn't kind of really explained either. It was
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
you know, let's get the party started.
Yeah.
Ping, off you go.
Yeah, I just went with the flow at that point.
Yeah.
I don't think
All right then. So after all of that, I
Well,
think
no, don't. Let's not skip over the introduction of two massive elements in the film that happened right after the anointing of from the exposition fairy.
Right.
We cut to Arnie riding across a field to Ennio Morricone's.
No, this was my next story beat.
This was the worst music for a barbarian. Like it sounded. I half expected the Monty Python team to come around the
Yeah.
corner with their coconuts. It sounded terrible. I'm going to try and find the music and see if we can put it on at the end of the show.
It's only a model.
It was terrible. It was terrible. And then to see Ennio Morricone's name flash up there and know that he was the guy that composed it, a little bit of me died. A little tiny piece of me died.
So we have a bit of a montage.
Yes.
Of what looks like the most barren, bleakest, freezingest,
I was convinced it was
treeless-
Scotland.
Yes,
It wasn't.
treeless Scotland.
Yeah, it was Italy.
With who I've got down here as non-Conan galloping
Yes.
about the place.
Yes.
Well, riding with concern.
That's right.
This direction and that direction and up here and up there.
On heading somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's an important story beat that you might miss if you don't pay attention.
What is that?
He comes up to a bridge, and the bridge has been cut because it's one of those rope bridges.
Yes. And so he turns around and rides away.
And he says to himself, no doubt, reading the script inside his mind, "Oh, bugger, now I'm going to have to go the long way."
That's right.
And this will take much longer.
Ah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
yeah.
Yes, you have to have the script to
Yeah.
understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
And then
This is going to make me late for the things I have to be doing later.
cut to temple. cut to women in temple.
So we cut to the Temple of Doom, or the Temple of something or other.
The temple of ladies with swords.
Yes, the Sword Lady Temple,
Mm-hmm.
the Sword Nuns,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're just about to have some sort of ceremony. So we've got this big temple, and there's all of this, people prancing around in gold and robes, as you do when you're a temple nun vixen, and swords and shields, and they're talking in weird ye olde language.
And
What-
it actually remind me of the Justice League and the Amazonians.
Yes, totally,
Yes.
totally.
And they had the sunroof at the top of their
Yeah.
temple as well.
Yeah.
Where the bad guys came in with their ropes. Will they never learn?
It also reminded me of Monty Python actually with Galahad and the nuns in that castle.
Yeah.
So I think the music would also put me in the Monty Python
Yeah.
vein.
You couldn't unhear it.
Yeah, and he goes into and Galahad walks in, there's all those nuns and has a weird
Yeah.
session with those. But that kind of reminded me of this.
Okay, so the boss nun says, "Where art that non-Conan guy who was supposed to turn up?" And some other nun says, "Oh, he's not here. We'll have to go ahead anyway."
Yep.
All right. So what are they going to be up to? They're going to be doing something. They've got a project plan for that afternoon.
At that stage, we don't know who they're talking about unless you notice the bridge.
And put two and two together,
That
and
they were
happen to be
talking about
genius.
Conan.
Yes. Non-Conan.
Non-Conan.
Yes. So anyway, what are they up to?
They have an almighty powerful orb, orb of power, and they have to destroy the orb of power in slow motion.
Yes,
And
and
had it destroyed it at normal fucking speed, then everybody would be alive, and there wouldn't be. But instead, they decide to do everything at slow motion, and the bad guys come in and spoil the party.
so to me, it's a little bit of a weird thing because what's one of their prayers? What do they pray when they're praying to the gods?
I can't remember.
Where did they get the blue ball, the green ball from? The green magic ball from the gods.
Right.
Right? So their prayer is, thank you, O gods, for the super powerful giant mega ball, but we're going to destroy it.
Before it destroys the world.
Yes. So thanks for giving us something that we couldn't handle and is
Yep.
like a nuclear bomb. Please forgive us.
And how are they going to destroy it, Dan?
Well, it's solar powered, of course.
It needs light.
It needs light.
And the more light...
That's why they got the sunroof. See, it's all coming together, of course.
You're right.
So they're going to put it in eternal darkness.
Yep.
They have a big hole they dug in the backyard,
And
they're
then
going to bury it.
solar battery will run out.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
will be
All
well with the
good.
world.
Yep, and then you won't be able to restart it again for some reason because once its batteries run out.
Yep.
We
All
just
right.
took a blanket over it. That would seem to be the easiest solution.
You're right.
All right.
They were a bunch of sword-wielding nuns that...
So they're all standing in circles and chanting and raising and lowering their swords, and meanwhile outside, a bunch of ne'er-do-wells arrive.
Typical barbarians wearing... while the good guys are all in white inside with shiny swords, the bad guys are outside with rusty swords and black fur.
With studs and points.
Lots of studs.
Pointy
the
bits.
Bedazzler gone wild. And I have to say that the outfits that a lot of these clans wore in this film are incredible.
Yeah, they're bloody amazing.
They're absolutely incredible. And then it's Flash Gordon again. Like, I didn't notice it at the time, but now knowing that it's Flash Gordon's the same. Like, their outfits for all their different clans are very similar. But these guys were no different to the other clans in the film. They were very well attired, fully bedazzled.
So we focus in on Icor, I think his name is. Igor?
Who is the...
Icaller? What's he called?
I think it's IKOL.
Eichel.
who is
Uncle Eichel?
played by the crazy Nazi from Indiana Jones.
Yes.
That's I was trying to remember
The
what
guy
he
that
was
gets
from.
the burnt
Yeah.
Disc on his
disc
hand.
on his hand in Indiana Jones.
Because
yeah.
when he speaks, he always has spittle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he's an evil
That's
character
his
actor.
trademark, spittle.
Okay, so he's first to attack the power nuns.
Mm-hmm.
And how does he attack them and what does he do exactly?
A ninja star.
A ninja star, yes. And where does the ninja star actually strike? Because he hits the lead nun, he hits the boss nun.
In the chest through armor.
Yes, through the very strongest piece. She has like this 5 centimeter thick, gold diamond
Yeah.
piece of armor, and it sticks right in the end of there. A little tiny bit of blood comes out, and she dies.
And she dies. And then later on, we see her covered in blood all around the feet area for some reason. But yes, I remember thinking, pretty sure that wouldn't have killed her.
It would barely even have hurt.
Yeah. It hit her in the exact place that you would need to hit to not kill her.
Yes, and that was armored as well.
But that starts the great battle.
Yes.
And the girls are holding their own.
Yeah.
At
Yes.
one point there,
They first they drive the
they drive them back,
Then they
and then they
sneak
come through
above
the
there.
sunroof.
Yeah.
and it's all over. A
Upside
two-sided
down to the
attack, a pincer movement.
All right, so they fight, and then they win, and then they lose. And then the queen arrives. So what's her name again?
Gedrin.
Queen
Gedrin.
Cedric?
I'm bringing it up. Move on and
Gedrick.
I'll get back to
Queen
it.
Gedrick?
Let's go Queen Scarface for now.
Queen Scarface, and she wants the green balls.
And this is the same queen
Yes.
that wanted to abscond with Red Sonja, and Red Sonja was having no bar of it.
She has taken a fancy to Red Sonja for some unknown reason.
That's right.
Now, so they've secured the green balls.
But not before they tested it.
Yes, they're going to have to do a little quick experiment.
She had to give it an experiment,
Okay. So she asks one of the blokes to go up and touch it.
at which he does, and what happens?
He gets zapped away.
completely disappears.
Yep.
And what happens to his clothing?
It doesn't disappear, and then
No.
it disappears.
It
No,
disappears too.
His clothing disappears as well.
That's right. Well, first he turns green
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
flash, and then everything goes.
Yeah.
And his clothing.
That's right.
This guy shouldn't play with balls.
That's
the
right.
role there.
And what if
Girls.
we learn about green glowing things in fantasy swords and sorceries? It's,
They're never good.
You don't much mess around with them.
So then Queen Cedric asks, I mean,
Gedrin.
Gedrin.
Did
Look.
did you watch the film, Dan?
Women's names end in A.
No.
You have Melissa,
Sonja.
Sonja, you have Broomhilda,
Yep.
but Cedric is not a name.
It's because that's not her name. It's Gedrin.
Oh, well, then it's just as bad.
Thank you, Dana.
He's got the. I mean, if you look at some of the names in the piece, there's a lot of those fantasy stalwarts there. There's an OR name, which is Calador, which is Arnie's non-Conan name. Sonja, Falcon, spelt with a K.
Yes. Because fantasy,
Yeah. Prince Tarn, and Icol, Brightag. So there's a lot of good fantasy names in there. But you're right, the least fantasy-sounding name is Gedrin.
Sonya's not very fantasy sounding.
No, it's very Nordic, isn't it? She looks like
Right.
a Sonja.
Gedrin might
The
be
actress
kind of
looks like a Sonja, but
Okay.
yes, a Sonja's not a very barbarian name, is it?
All right, then. So Queen Gedrin calls up one of her female peoples and says, now you touch it, because we have to complete this experiment. And
And-
she trepidantly touches it and nothing happens.
And we learn that only women can touch the orb.
And
And there's no OHS in that outfit.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
but I was amused that it also can determine male clothing and destroy male clothing with equal disdain.
Yeah.
So
No,
there's
you've
that.
got your male sweat on it.
Oh, no,
Your male hormones.
It can detect.
Or your...
All right, then. So then they all pack up and leave
with
But-
the orb.
Thank you.
with the orb. They take the orb because that's what they're after. I'm still good. And then they chuck the remaining nuns in the hole. Don't need them anymore.
They seemed to scream for a very long time.
They did. They were waiting for that
Yeah.
door to close. They're like, it's a very slow door. Closing.
I
Closing.
kept
actually-
remembering that scene from Austin Powers where they get, I'm still alive down here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, they groan. There's more groans and heavy breathing
That's
than in
right.
a porno film.
That's right, there is
Yeah.
too.
And I was
There's
actually,
this whole conversation that goes on, and in the background you can hear these women down the hole just groaning and breathing.
I was actually relieved when they started to scream. I was like, thank Christ for that.
Yep.
All right, but one nun escapes. Nun Varna nun. The Red Varna nun.
Who turns out to be
None other than,
Sonja's sister.
yes. So she manages to
who
escape.
doesn't get killed at the farm.
No.
We didn't really know that she had a sister because all of the fairy god exposition godmother said that all of the family got killed.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
not all of the family got killed. Apparently one of them worked at the temple.
Yeah.
was down at the temple that day.
And she was a bit of a badass.
She was
at the
nunning
temple.
that day.
So I don't think she was your typical nun, though,
No.
was she? She was more of
Well,
a warrior.
None of them were.
No, I think they were more Amazon than nuns.
Yeah. Sisters of the sword.
It was the
Nunazons.
the copious amounts of gold bling that had a lot to do with it, and the fact that they were all pretty handy with a sword.
Yeah, they were combat nuns. Haven't you ever had
you're
combat
right,
nuns
you're
before?
right, yeah.
All right, so she's running across the landscape, and there's some bad guys chasing her, and Non-Conan sees the whole deal going down, and then she flies across a thing and lands on a thing, and then
What he's talking about is a flying fox.
It's
across-
flying
across
fox.
a chasm. Yeah.
which was odd because there were like two flying foxes, and she grabbed the first one and whizzed across, and they're bad guys chasing her. And I'd be like, wouldn't you grab the second one and do something
Take it
with
with
it?
you?
Take it with you.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, she had an arrow in her back, so she was probably not thinking straight.
She landed on the other side in
Non-Conan's arms.
Calador's arms.
Calador, and he pulls out the thing, and then he goes to proceed to chop up all the bad guys into small diced bad guy pieces.
Yep.
And what does she say? She says that she's... yes,
must be destroyed.
Yeah.
that's right. It causes earthquakes and things, and there's 13 days and something.
Yep.
13 days, sister Sonja.
You must find my sister.
Once I reconciled and it all goes back to the broken drawbridge, the broken rope bridge across the chasm from Arnie's right at the start of the film, right?
Yes.
Once you reconcile that it was Arnie that was supposed to go to the temple and it was late, and they said, well, let's just start without him. Then the sister that's dying in his arms, he knows her.
Yep.
And he knows about the orb because that's where he was going anyway.
Yep.
And he's a nobleman. And he's like, quite high up in his clan. Without that, if you don't make that leap, if you don't understand that that's who they were talking
I didn't
about,
really understand what was going on.
then all of a sudden it's, why has this guy got so much interest in this whole thing? And now he's got to go and get the girl and bring her back and, won't say no for an answer and all these other stuff.
I actually think they did that on purpose.
Yeah. To make it a little bit.
Because then they have this thing where it's a reveal at the end.
Yeah.
And it's what I call the too half-assed road in writing. There was the writer in one arse cheek was going for the letting us know that he's the high priest.
Yeah.
That's where he's going. The bridge is down.
Yeah.
And then the other cheek was writing in mind of having this reveal. Aha, that's who he is. That's why he's interested. And they only half committed to both.
Yeah, yeah. They half-assed it.
They needed to pick one
Yeah.
and do it properly.
That's right. And there was no payoff.
No.
And that's why you question it. If I hadn't been watching it with Dan and we were able to say, I think he's the guy that was supposed to be at the temple, and then later we were able to confirm it, but at the time we weren't 100% sure.
Yeah. Because then later on there's the big reveal where he reveals to Sonja, because I am Calidor, the high priest.
Yeah.
And I was going there, and we're supposed to be like, ooh.
Yeah.
That's why he's interested.
That's right.
But yeah, they half committed to,
They didn't totally conceal it like they should have if they were going to do the big reveal, and they didn't totally reveal it like it was meaningful and had some payoff to it. Yeah, you're right. Where are we, Dan?
Okay, so we're at the Ninja Dojo, which is
yes.
just down the street from the nunnery.
Yes. One of the
Has a giant samurai that people that
ride through underneath.
yeah, kind of looks like he's sitting on the toilet.
It looks like visitors are coming from the arse of the giant god.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's one of the more interesting matte paintings I've ever seen.
Now, I was going to ask that, how is that done? Because obviously they didn't actually build that.
Matte painting.
It's painting.
Yeah, matte paintings in this were pretty good.
They were excellent.
Yeah.
They're very good. The
I was very
sets and the
impressed.
matte paintings are all very good.
The set extensions were great. And I
All
put
very
that
good.
down to, I think the Italian cinema, they did a lot of those big Roman films, a lot of the, Cleopatra type films. They knew what they were doing with their set extensions. They knew exactly how to just include certain parts of real set and then paint around on the
Yeah,
glass.
well, because that's what I was going to ask. How was that done?
Glass. So they have a piece of glass in between the actors and the piece of ground that doesn't get painted, and then they paint everything else. So it's a single fixed point perspective. It's really difficult to do, and there's real art form to it, because you have to paint from a fixed point perspective, which is where the camera goes. And then literally the actors can move around in that whole space there, as long as they don't cross and move behind the glass. Yeah, so the glass is out probably about 5 feet in front of the camera. And they did that in Star Wars, when Obi-Wan Kenobi turned
So
off
there's
the
a small
deflector
painting
shield.
right
And
in front of the camera.
about 5 feet.
basically.
It's a big pane of glass, maybe about 6 foot, 12 foot wide, 6 foot high. And they paint, and this goes all the way back to... what's the famous South versus North, Gone with the Wind?
Yeah.
They paint, matte paintings. They go right back to the turn of the century, and we got really good at them. But the Italians got really, really good at them.
I mean, you've also got to remember they've got to match the lighting perfectly. as
Absolutely,
well.
yeah.
Otherwise, it looks really.
It's a super. It's like to get it right, and they got every one
Yeah,
of
they
them
were very
right in
good.
this film.
They were all very convincing.
That's how it's done. Well,
Usually
I'll be back.
budget.
It could also be
screens.
a big glass wall with a painting on it, and then there's like a hole cut in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's where the actors are standing, you
Yeah.
know, on the top of Mount whatever.
Yeah.
And they're walking along.
They'll force perspective it.
Yeah, yeah. And that they am even maybe 100 metres away, walking on a
Yep.
little tiny hill, and
They're
there's
just
the
filming
cameras.
through this little hole in the
Yeah.
image. Yeah.
Well, Cletus has been educated.
All right, then. So we see the end of a sword battle. that's being, some sort of, it turns out to be some sort of training thing. And what appears to be the over-decorated Japanese sword ninja master dude.
One of the most practical outfits.
Can I just make a point here? This movie has some of the most ridiculous hats I've
Yes.
seen in
Yes.
any movie, except possibly Star Wars.
Yeah.
It has some ridiculous hats. But the hats were
You're right. And
Yeah.
and the outfits of the clans I mentioned earlier, usually it's the hats that are the
hats
most
were-
decadent things.
Yeah.
amazing.
Because even the guys that were off to the side of the great sword battle that was going on in the arena in this sword
Yeah,
clan,
that's right. They had those.
they had the very samurai-looking leather type hats, and every clan had some kind of
Bizarre headgear.
decadent hatwear.
When you go into medieval times, when people actually used to wear hats to protect their heads, you find that they tend to be smooth, bullet-shaped things.
Yeah.
So that when you clonk it on the top, it just kind of swooshes off to the side. You don't put loads of spikes all over it to catch swords and battle axes and break your neck when somebody tries to whack you on the head.
It looks like the theory behind the headwear for all the clans is scare your opponent.
Or I'm off to the Melbourne Cup.
Or, and ranges in between those two.
Yeah.
But they're all. There was, I think, one of the bad guy clans might have even been the Queen Gedron's bad guys. They had this skull, and it was the top half of the skull was up here, but the bottom half was this big, wide, round, sort of like this, and it looked like two trash can lids.
Yeah. That's a gorget, I think
with
it's called.
teeth all the way around here, and it made it look like a Muppet, like one of those. There's two Muppets, the alien Muppet. Me, 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 more, 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 more. And they had the same big, wide, round sort of brim mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Not very scary.
All right, so and then what we find out is the sword master of the dojo has just been defeated, and who's it been defeated by?
Red Sonja.
Red Sonja.
Ziggy Stardust.
That's right. That's right. We haven't seen Red Sonja in the film since she was lying in the dirt and was chatting to the exposition fairy.
I'm convinced Red Sonja is played by Ziggy Stardust, who's played by David Bowie.
That's right,
In this
because they
movie.
both have identical red mullets. And there's not a lot of red mullets in cinema history.
I think there's only 2 times in history when mullets were popular, and that was back in the days of yore. And
And you got to admit, her mullet is like it's
It's a
halfway
serious
down her
mullet.
back at the back,
it's a committed mullet.
and it's completely got that shaved flat top sort of out front
Buzz
part at the
thing.
front.
It would make Billy Cyrus proud.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I think the subculture, just in the back of people's minds, after they see a movie like this, it just sits there, and then one day it dawns upon them that that's what they should
They
wear.
wake up in the middle of the night.
I should go to the speedway with my hair looking like that, and the mullet was born.
All right, so it looks like old Sonia's just finished her final assessment at sword school,
That's right.
and she's now top of the class.
She's bested the master. The student has bested the master.
No, the master was the Grandmaster Flash in the big wings.
Oh,
Well,
the
her master
second
was the guy
master.
she was fighting.
The other master.
He's the more priesty sort of mentor, old boy. So what do you do when you have successfully passed the trials?
Well, you got to get some sort of reward
That's
or some
right.
sort of gold star or something.
And what
or
does a
other.
swordsman need?
Swordsman would need a sword.
Roll out the sword. Take
My-
me to the blacksmith's abode.
My story beat here is worst sword choosing scene in history. If you were going to design a super magical sword choosing scene,
Yeah.
how would you do it? What wouldn't you do? Or what would be some of the hallmarks of a pretty lame magical sword choosing scene?
A voice from nowhere.
Yes.
I didn't mind the voice from nowhere. What I didn't like was we didn't get to see any swords.
No.
They're all stuck. They're all stuck in holes, and the only thing we could see were handles.
Well, it was a very neat smithy.
Yeah.
So she walks into like the blacksmith shop, and then she's standing around, and then she hears a like magic voice who says,
Sonja.
"So choose a thing, do something, Sonja." And then she looks up and goes, "By golly, I will." And then we see a shot of about 1 million swords, and she reaches off screen to somewhere where we can't see and pulls out a sword and waves it around. Whoa!
And the music comes up. So she has her sword, which has no specific ability other than being shiny.
I think yes, because they kind of shoot themselves in the foot later because they say, the sword doesn't do anything. It doesn't glow or
anything.
Swing or...
You're the law man, right? Is there any
s-
sort of significance with the sword?
Not Sonja
Is Conan
like-
the same?
Yep, they can pick up any old sword and
For Conan, it's just steel. Like,
and for Red Sonja it's the same thing.
So it's this half-assed thing where they said, yeah, she gets a sword, and then they're like, well, shouldn't it be a magic sword? And she gets a super spirit to tell her, and they're like,
I'm with Dan.
yeah,
There was a magic voice that told her to pick that sword, and yet that sword has no power whatsoever.
Yeah, they needed to have said something like wow, it's perfectly balanced.
Yes,
for me,
or
something like that.
Yeah.
got my name written on it or something.
Or it
at
feels
least.
as light as a feather, or something like that, strong as 14 bars of bloody lead or something.
Or just cut the scene completely because it didn't actually achieve it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or just her be very pragmatic and go, this is a good sword.
Yeah, any sword will do. Yeah.
Oh, she chops an anvil in half or something with it. And goes, this is a keeper.
Yeah. They missed a moment there. I think they missed a moment.
They did.
The other thing that they didn't have was they didn't have the sneak preview for us, because if I was a director, I would have her whimsically listening to the magic spirit of exposition, and then I'd cut to the glowiest sword in the whole show with little sparkles coming off it, and then she goes, that one.
Yep.
Zhung.
Yep.
All right. Non-Conan arrives instantaneously after she's picked up her kit.
Exactly that moment in time.
And I like the line that he delivers. He gallops up. Your sister is dying. I'll take you to her.
Doesn't say hello. Doesn't say I'm such and such.
I've got that down here actually.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Your sister's dying. I'll take you to her.
Yes.
And
That is a
no one
line.
questions it. No one questions that.
That's right. He
No
could
one-
be. He could be some kinky freak from up the street.
No one says like, who the fuck?
She's
are
the
you?
only
Why
chick
are you-
in town.
Are you in my sword school? No, you just
Yeah, or the boss of the dojo says, I thought your sister was killed.
Yeah. Yeah. What you said? Your family died.
Yeah. All right, so she goes and sees Varna, who's dying, and then she's, Varna's telling her about powerful talismans and green balls and light and power and 13 days and more earthquakes and you can point a stick at. So what happens? So she says, Sonja says what? She's going to have to go and do something about this lickety-split. And Conan says, I'll help you. Yeah. And she says, no, back her off.
Yep. Or,
Because she's made a vow.
Yeah.
What's the vow?
And hang on.
No, we're not up to that yet.
Well, no, we're not up to that. Well, didn't she say something like, I don't need no help from no man?
Well, at the end of her sword fight, the master goes to give her a hug.
Yeah.
And she backs off, and then the master, the grandfather master,
Grandmaster Flash.
he says, you're going to have to like men eventually, otherwise it's going to be bad news.
Yeah, it's going to be your undoing.
So we get introduced to the notion that she doesn't like any men.
Yep.
The problem
And
is
she
she
says,
was
"Well, I
being
like
hassled by a woman.
That's right. Yeah.
Not making a lot of sense to me. All right, so...
It's a fair call. Well, she did get raped by a lot of men, though.
Well, there was that. All right, so...
Yeah, that tends to leave a lasting impression, I suspect.
That's fresh.
So she's going to gallop off and go and do the hero thing, and she's not going to take non-Conan with her.
Well, the plan that she has to execute is to destroy the orb. So it's now her job to destroy the orb.
Yes.
And she's told that Gedrin has the orb.
All right, so next scene we cut to is, I've titled here, The Prince and the Oaf. So we're in a destroyed city on a giant hand.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're introduced to
Prince, what's his face? And Big Oaf, what's his name? What's his name?
Falcon and Tar.
Falcon.
Falcon and Tarn.
What's his name?
Tarn.
Tarn.
Tarn, I don't know.
Yeah, Tarn.
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 Couldn't he be Prince Gedrick and the chick be Tarn, the Queen Tarn?
Yeah, that would have worked.
That would have worked
That
better.
would have worked. It's Prince Tarn, played by Ernie Reyes Jr., who's quite a famous little actor. He was in a lot of young kid ninja movies and stuff. I think he was in American Surfer Ninjas or something like that. You know those Canon film shitty. Well, Canon Films, all they needed to do to make a film was to put America and ninja in the title, And there's got like
With half
40
of it
films
done.
in their repertoire where there's
Yeah.
American Ninja 2 and American Ninja Surfer 7. He was in some of those.
All right, so they're in some peril, and Sonja turns up and saves them from their peril. And then they have a discussion.
Very, very non-convincing.
Yeah.
Hand.
Peril.
Supposed to be a stone hand, but it was clearly made out of fiberglass.
Yes.
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 It just-
And how they got into that terrible predicament with him
Yeah,
balanced on one
I
end
wasn't
and the
really
I
sure.
don't quite know.
Kind of one of the things about this film is it kind of has humour, but it's not very well done. Again, it's another thing they don't seem to commit to it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If they don't commit to the humour, it just doesn't kind of work. There's a few places where there's sort of humour. There's another bit coming up.
Yep.
And you think, I'm not really sure that's supposed to be funny or not. 'Cause it doesn't
Yeah.
really commit to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a half-assed approach.
The half-assed approach again, yeah. I think they knew that it had to have a bit of humour, but they didn't really know how
Yeah.
to.
I don't know if it's supposed to
Yeah.
symbolise that the kids in the hands of the gods, or they just thought a hand would look cool.
That's a good point, maybe.
Yeah.
But I do somehow think you're overthinking it there.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
giving it more.
I think they had a hand left over from Conan the Destroyer.
yeah.
I'd say so.
His hand's so cool. Put it in the movie. All right. So basically, this prince guy, this annoying child actor prince guy, is like the king or prince of some city that Gedrick blew up,
Mm-hmm.
and then Gedrick buggered off somewhere else, and so Sonja says, he says, the what's his name,
Falcon.
Falcon, says that if you want to go and destroy the green talisman, you're going to have to go to this other city.
Yep.
And what does he say? You can take the long way or the short way.
That's right.
The hard way or the short way or something like that, or the
And she has to go through the short. The short way. You have to go past Brightag's toll gate.
that's right,
And she says, "Well, that's what I'll be doing."
that's right, and rides off.
And gallops off. So then we arrive at Brightag's gate. So Brightag has a big gate, and he's got a little small army, and he's a jerk.
Yes, and he has a small army with once again
Amazing
brilliant
headpiece.
headwear.
Incredible headpiece.
Fantastic hats. Yes.
They didn't get much else in the way of armour. Like they were running around in loincloths, but they had.
Was I imagining this, or were all those hats inspired by animals? Was there one guy who had an elephant?
Oh, I don't know.
There was a dangly
Maybe.
elephant trunk thing. Yeah,
Another
you're
one
right.
had a
You're right.
bird on his head.
Yeah,
I think they were sort of
I
inspired
think they
by
were.
animals.
Yep,
They
you're
might
right.
have been.
Yeah.
They were impressive though.
Well, they put a lot of effort in.
They
So-
should have put more effort into their armour.
Mm.
'Cause they didn't last long when Arnie turned up.
So Sonja turns up and says, "Oi, Brightag, where are you? Open your gate." And he says, "Not going to open the gate." And she says, "Come on, open the gate." And he says, "No, I'm not going to open the gate." And then they go up into his throne room,
That's right.
and he says, "I'll only open the gate if I can do horrible things to you."
Yep.
And she says, "No, don't do horrible things to me. How about we have a sword fight?" And he has, in fact, killed 117 people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 116, but one has...
No, there's only one person he hasn't killed,
Yes,
and he has no legs.
that's right. Did he not kill him because he had no legs?
I think he chopped his legs off.
Oh, you got the impression. You don't think he was like, "Oh, he's got no legs." Like,
I think he was still
I'm not going to
bragging.
kill this guy.
I think he fought all of them, and then that guy he let go because he cut his legs off.
It's like 117.
And a half.
Yeah, 117 and a half.
Like another Monty Python.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, that's right. The Black Knight.
It's just a flesh wound.
All right. So they have a fight, and who wins?
Red Sonja, of course.
Red Sonja, of course.
And then, despite having made the deal that his men would let him go,
Uh-huh.
the treacherous bastards decide to
Yep.
attack Sonja.
Yeah, so there was a kind of a half deal that if she managed to kill the boss, those guys would all, like, I don't know, go home, have the afternoon off or something or other.
They weren't very convincing when they agreed
No.
to the deal. They weren't very convincing.
No, they were like,
Like, yeah, we'll let her go. Yeah.
So she's in a bit of trouble because now she has to kill all these people.
There's at
But-
least 30.
There's at least 30. But luckily, Non-Conan turns up
That's right.
and he kills them all.
He's changed his outfit. The thing I know
He
he
did
had
too.
a lot of outfits,
Mhm.
considering he's a barbarian. Well, he's not a barbarian.
He's a high priest.
Well, I guess that's true. That's what confused us. I thought he was a barbarian, but clearly he isn't.
And his horse did have a lot of stuff dangling off
Yeah, I
it, like
guess
a lot
He's a
of
muscle
bags,
priest.
a lot of bags and stuff. So clearly he had more outfits.
From this particular scene, I remember he was wearing a rather fetching sort of red
Yeah.
jumpsuit,
That's right.
gold lame, and
That's right.
embroidery.
You can't expect a high priest to just walk around a dusty loincloth.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
like he
Where
was
do you
on
get off
stage
to?
in Las Vegas.
I mean, look at the Pope. You know, look at the Pope mobile. You know,
He did look. There was something. Who are the two guys that work with tigers and stuff like that?
Oh,
And
there's two magicians.
Siegfried and Roy.
yeah,
There was something very Siegfried and Roy about his outfit, wasn't there?
both.
He even had
Siegfried
the
and Roy.
headband.
I could have done with a little more Siegfried and Roy actually in that outfit.
And then I did notice it because he held the gate. I don't know quite why he didn't go with her. I mean, I didn't mean to say that. But apparently he held them off so she could run. As she rode off, she looked back and gave him a smile. Warming to him at that point.
Yeah.
She's like,
She's starting to.
Well, she's I assume
Impressive.
impressed by his skills and his bravery and his self-sacrifice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because she does say that's signs of a real man. She
Yeah.
points that out to the little brat
Yeah.
later on. Or before or after, I don't know.
Because it is a bit weird when they get the key to the super gate, then they're fighting all the way up to the gate, and then they open the gate, and then Sonja goes through the gate and closes the gate,
Yeah.
and Conan stays on the other side of the gate.
Yeah.
When if he had gone through the gate and closed the gate, all the bad guys would have been on the other side of the gate.
Because you got the key.
'Cause you
And they
the
got
key.
horses.
And they
Yeah.
got
Exactly. 14 seconds later, they're 300 metres away from the bad guys.
Maybe he left his mobile phone or his horse keys somewhere else.
I honestly think he was just big noting. He was big.
He's showing off.
He was showing.
Look at me killing all. Oh, she's gone. Look at my new outfit.
That's the outfit there, actually.
Yeah.
That might have been it.
Yeah.
All right, then. So the prince gallops off on the other side of the gate, and she goes into a wonderful enchanted forest. And what did she find in the forest?
Two blokes who were taking the long way round, yet somehow are there.
In front of her, without going through the gate.
Exactly.
And-
They
and-
didn't have to battle the 30 guys or anything.
and they have no horses.
They had no horses. And she decides not to ask how they got there, like most humans would
You
have.
bastards lied to me.
You took the other way.
Yeah. So it's Prince, what's his face? Prince
Tarn,
and
Falcon.
Falcon, and they're all in trouble, and they've been harassed by...
Tarn's in trouble because Falcon went off to find food.
Yep.
And Tarn is being picked on. He's actually being torn apart.
He's
by
being stretched.
A couple of guys on horses and some ropes and a tree.
And unfortunately, they fail.
That's right.
Can you imagine you're the head bad guy, and you're like, we found a kid in the forest. What are we going to do?
Tear him apart.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, just tie his legs to a horse. That'll be fun.
But it's because of the way he's dressed. They assumed he's got
Got the
gold
gold.
somewhere.
Got the money.
I do have to say that the lead bandit was probably dressed better than all of them in that.
Yeah.
And he had a nice hat.
He had a pretty
did have a
fancy
good
hat.
hat.
It was like the Guardian Angels in New York, but on steroids.
Yes, it was like lots of things on steroids. All right, so we then cut to because Sonja comes in and kills everybody. Right. So we now cut to Queen Gedrick, and she's in her, power fortress
That's right.
where she lives.
Yep.
And she's just arrived with the ball.
After sacking the prince's...
Yeah, she went to the prince's
Town.
place and then wrecked the joint
Mhm.
for some reason.
Using the orb.
Using the orb.
She's on a
yes.
roll, actually. She's
Yeah,
been
because-
sacking all over the place.
Because she destroyed half and then said, surrender or I'll destroy the other half. Well, that's what the prince explains. And he says, no, bugger off. So she destroys all of it.
I don't like the queen, actually, when she walks around. She doesn't look mean and angry. She looks kind of flouncy. She there's these big guards that are crunch, crunch. And she's kind of
She
flounce.
She
Turn and
flounces
twist.
I think
Hello,
it's the stiletto
flounce.
high heels will do that. In Barbaria, stiletto high heels will sort of...
They ruin the effect.
Well, they make you walk a certain way.
All right, so they discuss the power that they've got, and they're going to...
Well, we see the orb being stored in the room of candles.
That's
Yeah,
right. It's
and-
solar powered.
And I have a note about that. Why not just leave it in the sun?
Would have been the smart thing to do.
With mirrors.
There was a
and
lot of
brass
candles.
stuff.
There was a lot of candles.
And, yeah.
Well, they had to have it inside their fortress. They can't just leave it lying around.
And why not have mirrors on the walls or something?
Maybe
They
they
don't
could.
really know much about light.
That must have been why they went to that other place and they wrecked the joint, because they needed all them damn candles.
They stole the candles from the
Yeah.
prince's town.
That would have been a good plot point if they said, "Oh, they just came in and stole all the damn candles."
They didn't say they wanted our gold.
Yeah, we still got all our gold. All right, then. The Queen's got a big pet spider, which was kind of cool.
That's right.
And we never saw it again.
Yeah, why didn't we? it should have at least landed on somebody's face or something
Yeah,
or other, and
like-
have them run around.
It was a cameo.
Or Skeletor's lair.
But then they decide they're going to watch a bit of TV. So tell us about their
Oh,
TV.
that's right.
There's some dude over to one side of the throne room.
Yeah, some
looks like
sorcerer.
some barbarian sorcerer / DJ that's,
It's also a DJ.
that does his thing with some chemicals, mixes a few chemicals.
He reminds me of Lenny from Motorhead.
Yeah.
That's Lenny's dad.
And when he mixes certain chemicals, imagery appears on the mirror of illusion.
And they can see stuff.
Unfortunately, he gets the wrong channel to start
Yes.
with.
Yeah.
And we get some scantily clad young lady.
We can see
It's a
basically.
man. Wasn't it a man?
No, it's
I
a
think it was
woman.
well, she had boobs.
Yes, no, it was a young lady.
Yep.
That's basically, a medieval fantasy internet.
And there was this awkward moment.
That was one of his favourites that he had.
everyone in the throne room was,
bookmarked.
everyone in the throne room's looking at the DJ saying, "That's the wrong channel, dude. That's the wrong channel." But it just went on. It went on for,
Yeah.
for at least 12
Look,
seconds.
we've all had those moments at work.
Oh, is that DVD still in there?
This file filled with blues, which looked like a penis. And he started doing this with it.
That's right.
And I was
It
like,
did too. And the channel changed.
yeah, the channel shows up. Again, humour, but not quite.
Not quite committed. Yeah. Exactly. I think it was Siskel, Siskel and Ebert. They reviewed it and they were in stitches. And we're talking about a mid-'80s review on Entertainment Tonight or something. They were in stitches all the way through their review because they couldn't work out whether this was a parody of a swords and sorcery movie or it was a movie that was taking itself seriously and just missed the mark so badly.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. That it's in moments of it felt like a parody, but then they didn't go all the way.
Yeah.
And then it just, because they fell short,
Yeah,
it felt like, well, that humour just doesn't quite
Yeah.
fit
You-
in there.
You can't half-ass. You
Yeah.
have to do it.
And the wrong
As-
channel on the Mirror of Wonder was definitely one of those moments.
As Yoda says, do or not do. There is no try.
Yeah. Because it was a cool thing. Like, it was,
Yeah.
but they just didn't, go all. Well, the rest of the film didn't, it was the only moment that I think was genuine sort of attempt at humour in the film. But it still didn't go far enough to actually qualify as humour.
All right, so they then pick up
Well, they
Sonia.
get the right channel.
They
yeah.
get the right
When
channel.
He strokes his beaker for long enough and gets the right channel.
They then pick up Sonia
Yes.
and Prince
Tarn
Tarn and
Falcon.
And they were walking along and were riding along on their horses.
And the henchman says, "Shall I send out a small raiding party?" And,
No.
And she says, "No, let them get closer."
I think first of all is she instantly recognises Sonia
That's right.
for some reason.
That's right.
Like, oh, that's that Sonia chick.
Yes.
Which, yeah, seems a bit weird. All right, so
So they let them get closer.
yes, so they're going to let them get closer. All right, so the next story beat is those guys who we just saw have a camp for the night, and there's some sort of touching moments between
The kid.
Sonia and the kid.
The kid's up practicing his
Some
sword,
swords, and
and she
gives him some
gives him
advice
some
and
world
Yeah.
values.
She
And-
says, he comes up behind him, and after he's basically agreed letter, stands behind him, and he's holding the sword, says, "No, you need to hold the hilt gently." And he's like, and then he looks at her and goes, "You're very beautiful."
she's like surrounding him and like,
that's
you know,
right.
got his, you know, hilt in her hands and all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff's
Yeah.
going on.
And then he basically says, he'd like her to be a queen, but he's not old enough.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a very tight
was-
moment.
Awkward and
But then he thanks her.
slightly inappropriate.
There's a little bit of a plot arc, a little bit of a character arc there. He's softening.
Yeah.
He's starting to realise that he's.
It was one of the more interesting arcs in the film was the young prince's.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a plot
Yeah.
character arc. I think it was the only character. arc.
Yeah.
Oh no, there's also the
You have to be close to your
there's
microphone.
also
I
the
think.
Sonia character arc. You know, learning that she was going to like Conan.
Mm.
They're not Conan.
That's
The
right.
non-Conan.
Yeah. No, you're right.
All right then. So after we have that touching moment,
Mm-hmm.
we go back to the Queen Gedrick and Icole, and they've got a cunning plan.
Mm.
So the start of the plan is they're going to use the magic orb to create a storm.
That's right. Force them out of the storm.
Yes. They're
Force
gonna create
them
the storm,
indoors.
and so they'll have to go inside to the Cave of Doom.
That's right.
And
What's in the Cave of Doom?
yes, what is in the Cave of Doom? It's a robot crocodile.
Because robots are exactly what you get in Barbaria,
Yeah.
in the ancient Cimmeria. They got robots everywhere.
I prefer to think of it as proto-steampunk.
Okay.
Proto
So this
steampunk.
point I wanted to note here. So this is I've looking at the landscape. Right, it's very rocky.
Yep.
It's deserts. It's mountains, and this guy's made a killing machine, which is a aquatic animal. Right? See, if I was going to make a killing machine,
Yeah. It'd be like
Probably-
a scorpion or something. on the,
I'd probably not go with a fish or a crocodile type thing. 'Cause it does
bang on the money.
limit
You bang on the
Good
money.
point.
limit your scope for actually.
Because if you
Maybe it
can't,
started off as a scorpion.
well, if you
but
can't manufacture a
couldn't
storm,
walk.
you're fucked.
He realised he couldn't make it.
Yeah.
I have to find some contrived way of getting into a flooded basement.
Sounded cool at the time.
Drive them inside.
But I will say, actually, are we on to the bit where the crocodile appears?
Yeah, why not?
It was a very cool piece of animatronics.
I thought
It
so
was.
too. And whatever
You know.
hydraulics or whatever the hell was going on underneath that water was impressive.
Yeah,
Do you
'Cause
think
I
they got
miss-
inspired by the scene in Star Wars?
Maybe.
yeah.
Maybe.
I miss animatronics. I have to say, all
Yeah.
this reliance on CGI, and it just really doesn't float my boat.
Yeah.
I like animatronics.
Yeah.
They certainly had some big,
Oh, the
powerful
the
thing
forces.
under that water that was
Because
just like
not only was it
whoosh,
driving
whooshing it
around this metal thing
Yeah.
and the water, it was
dro-
doing it with Arnie on its back.
Yeah, almost surfing on its back.
And he's like 125 kilos or something like that. He's a big boy
Yeah.
through the water.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right, so they get attacked by a big robot fish and they poke its eyes out and
That's right.
win the day.
That's
So
right.
can I, another point here. It wasn't anything to stop them getting out of the water at any point.
No, you're right.
Beforehand.
You're
Because there
right.
were steps leading up out of the water.
Yeah.
Once they killed it, they got out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Because the chamber was flooding.
Yeah, but
And then
they just,
OH, once it gets to OH&S would have stopped that. Just
Yep.
don't go in the water.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty simple. Manage the risk.
I felt
Yeah.
there's a bit of a plot hole there. But
And Conan wasn't there before. He just turns
yeah, he
up
just
in the
turned
nick
up
of
again.
time.
Yeah, he just
Oh, he
turned up
did
again.
too.
Yeah.
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 He always does. He seems
He's a bit
from-
of a stalker.
up to that point in the movie, he was just popping up where he wasn't
Yeah.
asked and offering help.
All right, so after that event, it's quite a big event. They all go off and have a camp,
Mhm.
and they make a fire, and they
Wasn't the bit before this where they actually had they already crossed? This is before that they crossed the crevasse, wasn't it?
Yes, it was before that.
So that was another bit because it was like we came to this crevasse and there's this giant skeletal beast.
Yeah.
yes,
Completely.
making a bridge.
I mean, it was huge.
Mm.
This thing must have been 200 meters long,
Yeah.
and yet there's nothing like that in the world apart from this thing. So
Yeah.
that was kind of a bit incongruous. And then she walked halfway across and says, "Yeah, this is safe.
Yeah.
Let's bring the horses across." No, that's not how you judge something structurally sound by going halfway across. And you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
all three of you horses.
Let's
gonna
go all the way across and then bring them one at a time.
Right. Anyway, obviously they made it across the lava.
Yes, yes. I've tiptoed across. It's all right for everybody to dance on it now.
Bring the horses.
Yep.
100 kilos of them.
All right.
And the lava river too. Like that shit goes on all the time. Crevasse with lava flowing through it. You get that all over the place.
It's a classic.
Mm.
All right, so they make a camp,
Mm-hmm.
and after they make a camp, Non-Conan makes his move.
That's right. And then finds out that she's got rules.
She's got rules. She's taken an oath.
What's her oath, Rick?
She will not sleep with a man unless he can best her in swordplay.
That's right. And I think Arnie sums up his intellect and says, well, any man that beats you in swordplay is not going to be much of a man left to sleep with.
Yeah, so basically you'll only be with a man that's tried.
To kill you.
Yeah. A man that has no legs, in other words.
Why would you want to be with a guy
Yeah.
that's trying to kill you?
You can see the wedding photos. There's this guy with no legs. Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
All right. So, only a person. Now, that's her oath, right? That she's taking this oath. It would have been nice, movie, if you had have shown us her taking that oath,
Yeah.
rather than the show don't tell.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, I've taken an oath. I did it when you weren't looking in a scene where there was no camera. All right, so only can be bested by a man, and so Non-Conan says, well, how about we have a sword fight right now? And so they do.
Yeah.
And that goes on for how many minutes?
Oh, at least 3.
At least 20
Well,
minutes.
felt like 20.
And now we're in a writer's dilemma, right? Because the only person who can have her is when they have the sword fight, and so if Conan wins, then we have the sex scene, or we have the thing, and then if she wins, I don't know, Conan's got no legs,
Yep.
non-Conan's got no legs,
Yep.
so she can't win,
Yep.
and non-Conan can't win, and so the writers have written themselves into a hole.
Yeah, they either have to be interrupted or just get tired out.
Yeah.
And they try
Equal.
both. So the little kid comes and tries to interrupt, and then non-Conan throws him away.
There was an awkward part there, the production-wise, because Conan's holding up the kid.
Yeah.
And there's clearly a wire. Like, you can see the wire that's holding the kid up, and Conan's got the big biceps.
I didn't see the wire.
There's a wire there. You can. Well, you need a bigger screen to watch your shit on, because it was a big wire. The wire was about this thick on the screen, and the weight was all wrong too. He was dangling from the wrong part from where he was holding him up. But yeah, they tried both of those solutions.
Okay, and so the second half of the fight, they start to get tired.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to highlight that old red Sonja chick isn't particularly spectacular when fighting as an actor. And then acting as somebody who's very tired for 2 minutes fighting isn't spectacular either. So you end up with like 2 minutes of them ching,
Yeah.
ching.
I found it oddly touching.
Oh, dear.
I thought, considering this is a highly sexist movie,
Yeah.
it was kind of nice that they did match them rather than having him
Yeah.
getting the upper hand at that
Yeah.
point.
No, I thought writing either way, sexist or not sexist, they couldn't have her be beaten, and they couldn't have her beat him either.
No, it's all right. It was
Mind you, up until that point, he'd saved them 3 times. He'd saved them already.
True. Anyway, that drags on for a while, and then they fall down at the bottom of the tree, and they're like, I don't know, what was the resolution at that? We just
They just
cut away and said, dun
Yeah.
dun 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 dun, and
Yeah.
we continue
They
on
went-
with the story.
I think they cut to the castle, and
Meanwhile,
something was going on at the castle.
something interesting's happening elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think we're starting to see the Queen is falling apart a little bit. The power's getting to it.
she's going all Trump.
Well, she seems to just completely forget about not Conan and the girl. 'Cause
Yeah.
she's got this plan to kill them with the robot crocodile,
Mm.
and then that didn't work. But then there was no reference to the fact it hadn't worked.
True.
Presumably, they must have known that it
She's
hadn't
got
worked.
she's got places to conquer, subjugate. She's they're a background project. They'll keep. She's got a focus the task at hand. That's why she gets paid the big bucks.
Yeah.
That's why she's the queen.
Yep.
She that's her personal project. But but that's not her job.
But it doesn't happen yet. The Indiana Jones Nazi guy gets the shits, but
Yeah.
it doesn't happen yet. It's not until they get to the castle.
Well, that's the next thing. So they arrive at the castle.
That's right. they have to go in the back door.
Yep.
Now that back door was pretty clever. Now how was that done? Was that actual set or was that again matte painting?
The big round rolly thing was
Yeah.
probably a set piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a bit
Impressive again.
leading up to that bit where they're carefully walking along the ledge. The
Oh,
three of
that's
them
right.
are, and the other dope bloke just walks up the path. You see that bit? So they're just like- and he just walks up underneath. Like, why were you? I don't know what.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't hire very good guards. They, cheap.
He's
cheap
not
guards.
taking it seriously at all.
He only gets paid a chicken a month or something or other.
Yeah. So they have to go in the back door, and they have to. They've got some nudge and a wink thing going on that they need to try to get the prince to not go in with them because it's going to be dangerous inside.
Yeah, it'll be dangerous for the young.
So they convince
whippersnapper.
him that somebody has to stay here and mind the back door.
And it's the most. They convince him because they say it's the most dangerous.
An important job or something. or
That's
other.
right.
All right, so then the rest of them climb up the walls and get inside the castle and start fighting people.
Not before Falcon, the fat, strong minder of the prince, is just walking down a hallway and then disappears through the floor of the hallway, which is a slippery tunnel that leads directly to
The canteen.
The dining room, the canteen, the
Yes.
cafeteria of the,
Yeah,
of the castle. He lands right in the middle of the table, and one couldn't help but think, why was there a hole in the middle of the floor?
This is an OH&S risk.
Yeah, they do prepare us with that by him looking at a hole, a
does
strange
he?
hole. They prepare us. They have him.
Well,
stick
he
his
didn't
head
get
in,
too prepared for it.
No.
and he's like, "Oh, there's a funny hole here. This place has got holes. That's strange." Takes a couple of steps, falls down one himself.
Whoa.
And yes, the OHS again is
Yeah.
completely lacking
Yes,
in that outfit.
it's laughable.
And then Conan jumps in. Not
But
not Conan.
before the big fella takes a big bite out of the turkey leg.
That's
Yes.
right. Got to have that gag.
Yes.
Got to have the turkey leg sight gag. And then Conan bursts into the room, even though he'd gone a totally different way. It was let's split up. Once again, has Scooby-Doo taught us nothing, right? Stay together, stay together.
And then there's a bit of slapstick. He lands on a table, catapults
The big
Falcon.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
with no consideration of what's going to happen to his teammate,
yeah,
mind you.
yeah. At that point, he's just a projectile.
Yeah.
All right, so they've all split up. They're all doing some fighting.
Yep.
Eventually, Uncle Eichel, is trying to, escape with some gold because he's a treacherous bastard.
This is Nazi guy.
This is
Yep.
Nazi guy,
Yeah.
Nazi Eichel,
Yeah,
Spittle boy.
and he's trying to go out the back door.
we're talking about Ronald Lacey, the actor.
Ronald Lacey. So, and the back door is, of course, being guarded by Prince Thorn. And what happens there?
Tarn, Prince Tarn.
Tarn.
They have a little tiff. They have a little
Little discussion, a little
fight.
challengey thing.
Tarn doesn't do too well. Gets slapped to the ground, and then Eichel runs out. But at some point during the battle, a sword gets stuck in the secret button hole for the roller door.
That makes the door open.
Well, it makes the door
Oh,
close.
makes the door close, yes.
He'd already pushed the secret button to open the door, and that's where Tarn had walked in, because
Mm-hmm.
he was guarding it on the outside. And then Eichel tries to escape after bitch slapping Tarn to the ground, but in the ruckus, the sword had gone in and pushed the button to start closing
And
the door.
it-
Eichel gets stuck and squished.
And he gets stuck because he reaches back for his gold, isn't it?
Was he?
I think he delays
Oh, it might have been.
Maybe.
going back for his gold because he's a greedy old spider.
Anyway, he
Or
gets
does
squished
does
horribly
the
under
kid
the door.
throw the sword? Does the kid throw the sword
No,
at the
sword-
button,
The sword gets thrown somewhere
which
along the line.
closes the door? Oh, I can't remember.
Can't remember.
Meanwhile, Sonja is going to confront Cedric.
Cedric the Entertainer. Gedrin.
So she goes into the Queen's throne room, and
That's
they're
right.
like, you suck. And they say, no, you suck.
Well,
And
let's
then
fight.
And they fight. Ching, ching,
And
ching,
what are
ching,
the
ching,
special
ching,
powers
ching.
that the Queen has?
Well, the Queen doesn't really have any
No,
powers.
she does, because she can appear over there, and then
No,
over
no,
there,
no,
and
no,
then she
no.
can appear over there.
No,
The
no,
wizard
no,
does
no,
that.
no,
Is it the
no.
wizard that does that?
She's
The
got
Wizard of
backup
Oz.
from her homies.
Oh, that's right.
Lenny.
Lemmy, Granddad Lemmy.
DJ Wiz.
DJ Wiz is in the background.
That's right. Mixing the potions.
Yes. So, this is the odd thing is that Sonja and Gedrick are like fighting,
Yeah.
and then the wizard starts making magic happen so that Gedrick starts teleporting around and going, ha ha ha, I'm over here, ha ha ha, can't catch me.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in the corner of the room, there's this crazy wizard
Yeah.
doing his thing,
Yeah.
and like,
And he starts to cut her as well.
that's right, yes, and he chooses, he's like,
Got his special cut juice.
yeah,
He's
paper
going,
cut spell,
and then-
engage.
That's right. And
Yes.
gashes would appear on Sonja.
Paper cuts.
And then she turns around and sees him in the corner.
Yeah, and then he's like, oh.
Oh, wait.
And you can
I
always,
forgot to put the screen up.
you can always,
Yeah.
you can always hear that needle on the record go.
And that's when Granddad Lemmy knew he fucked up.
Despite the fact that he stopped cutting her and doing the magic that was beating her while she's coming towards him, and chops his head off.
Couldn't he teleport her like backwards?
He
or-
just panicked. He panicked.
he panicked. Yeah, yeah. He reached to stroke the wrong beaker, and it just all went to shit.
Lost his head.
Yeah,
But
lost
how
his head.
come we couldn't spot him before?
I know she's in the corner of the room.
Yeah. There's only two people fighting and some sort of movement over to my left.
All right then. So
So now it's an even fight.
And actually, I just want to point out, wouldn't it have been just easy if there'd have been a curtain, for the curtain to come down during the fighting?
Yeah.
She spots him like that. You know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist.
That's how you do it.
Think of that one.
That's how you do it. Put him behind something like that.
I think the director should have addressed that. All right, so then they bolt.
Or even have him guarded or something. Yeah.
Then they run out. Gedrick runs out of the room and goes to the candle room where the big green ball is, and Sonja follows her.
That's right.
And there just happens to be, for some
It's a
reason,
travelling sword fight at this point. It's
Yes.
moving through the castle.
and they end up in that sword room, in the candle room, full of all of the candles where they're powering up the Super Ball. And then also, as they go in there, for some reason, probably in the script somewhere, the door slams shut behind them.
Actually, no, the Queen pulls the lever, brings the door down, but
That's right.
That's right.
Sonja manages to roll underneath.
Sneak underneath just at the last second.
Yeah.
And that's when Non-Conan and Falcon turn up.
Yep.
And so so there's going to be a big fight in the room.
But they can't get past the door.
That's right. It's too heavy. They're trying to lift it.
So you would think there's going to be a big fight, but it goes ching, ching, and she's pretty much dead almost immediately.
Yeah, because that's right. The orb has cracked the room like an egg.
Has it?
Yeah, and it's big
That's
chasm.
right. So that's why there's
And that's
lava.
Yeah.
And
River of
that's
lava.
where the liver. Yes.
And the Queen can't back away from that strike.
That's right.
Look, I thought that final fight scene was the only part of the movie that really got me excited, because that's when Red Sonja starts going batshit. She starts going ballistic.
Yeah.
And also, that's when old Gedrick realizes, she's not going to win this fight. And there's some couple of cool shots where, like, Sonja's like, wah! And Gedrick's like, oh, fuck, and chops her sword in half.
Chops her sword in half. That's right. And then
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sticks her.
she falls into the river of lava.
Falls into the river lava, yep.
Pretty bad blue screen shot, that one. It was probably the worst
with
blue
her.
screen.
Ah!
Falling. It's a terrible one.
Actually, I just realised that land, instead of having a water table, has a lava
Lava table. Yes. Not a good place to build at all. The resale value would be shit.
Wouldn't that make the light orb more powerful?
You'd think so. But fuck it. Let's put it in the lava anyway, and that's what she decides
Maybe it
to do.
overloads. It's got this tolerance. It can only take a certain amount of power. Like
Otherwise-
candles.
Yeah.
Well,
But if you
Otherwise
put
the
it-
fuse blows.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
it absorbs light, not
It's got a
heat.
power fuse.
There you go. See, science.
That's a fair call
That's
as
what
well.
saves it.
That's right. Once you go beneath the lava, there's still not a lot of light. So that's how the orb is destroyed. It's thrown into the lava.
The other thing that I liked in this scene that gave me a giggle was the name Falcon, because that's one of the characters. So when they're trying to lift the door, Arnold Schwarzenegger
Yeah.
is saying, "Fucking lift the door!
Yeah, he does too. Does too. He struggles with that name.
Fucking get my sword!"
He does too. Yep.
All right.
So they lift the door. They lift the door, and
I'm a child, I know, but
Sonja
I did like it.
escapes.
Well, there was a little bit of completely nonsensical scripting where the little boy goes in for no reason really.
Yes,
and
that's
doesn't
right.
Really do anything?
Yes, except getting himself in trouble.
Gets himself in trouble,
Mm.
and then she doesn't actually help him when he gets out again.
That's right.
That doesn't really make a lot. I don't know why they bothered with that.
So now they're escaping the crumbling
So I have my next story beat for that.
castle.
All the bad things blow up the end.
Yeah. Now here's the thing.
Yeah.
Why was it blowing up? Because the thing on the top of the castle was blowing up. Is that where they were? They were in that room at the top of the castle. Yeah.
Mm.
I thought they were down the bottom somewhere.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Because
I would have imagined they were
if
down
the
the
room at the
bottom.
top, then why was there a crack?
Well,
in
they
the
can't have
floor
been at the
going
top
over lot?
because, yes,
Yeah.
the crack to the
Then
lava.
why did the bit at the top start exploding?
Mm.
Because of that big jet of fire that you see at the end. See, it's gone straight up.
Yeah.
Fantasy.
yeah, making
I
stuff.
think they're just.
It always comes down to the green glowy magic thing. Whatever it is, whether it's a fist on top of a sword for the
Those things have so much power inside them,
if it's green and it glows,
it also explodes.
that sort of shit happens.
That's
You
the
can't
rules.
explain it, Tony.
No, I can't
It's
explain it.
about
You're
green
right.
glowing stuff.
About magic
Now,
science.
how do they do the blowing up castle? They have a small
That'll be the
model
miniature.
actually
Yeah.
One of the castles
Yeah.
blew up.
Bigature or miniature, yeah.
All right, so everything blows up, and then they win, and everybody's saying goodbye, and Non-Conan reminds old Sonja that, how about we try and kick each other's ass again?
Yeah.
You know, and then they kind of have a bit of a half-assed sword fight,
Yep.
followed by a big fat pash.
Got to have the barbarian pash.
He lets her win.
Mm. Yep.
But he can pass her.
Yeah.
No,
she has softened by the end.
Yes, her oath. She's given up on her oath. All right.
Well, we don't know. We don't know that.
Well, no, we don't. We don't.
Maybe she has another rule as well.
Well, I mean,
That's only first base.
Yeah,
that was the rule for first base.
I mean, that's just
right.
the patch. That's
Just for the patch. That's the patch rule. Right?
Yeah.
Second base.
Living together, fuck that.
Yes.
You must cut off your balls. That is my oath. See,
I can assist with this if you like.
I'm out of here. Yeah, but you're right. The movie just stops.
Again, with the movie just stopping.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Movie over. Everybody's exhausted. Go home. Take the afternoon off.
Well, Conan doesn't finish like that. Like, we get to see some resolution. He becomes the king, you know, and you can infer the type of future.
Doesn't it have a narrator at the end who also says,
I
and
think so,
then
yeah,
he
yeah,
did
yeah.
all these things?
It
and was
needed a
all
narrator. It
very
did.
good.
It needed a narrator at the. If we had a narrator, we wouldn't need the fairy godmother
True.
at the start of the film.
Yes, and we would, we would know.
But then it would it not be too similar to the Conan films? Because I think both the Conan films start with that heavy narrator voiceover.
Because the Conan comics did as well.
Yeah, yeah.
As did the books.
Yeah.
You have that line.
It's very comic style, isn't it?
Yeah.
That big sort of opening first page of exposition.
You know, because the first Conan story came from King Conan. He's really old. Telling a scribe about his adventures before he became king and how he was a barbarian. And that was actually the first Conan story that was written. And then went from there. And I must say, there was only actually, I think, one short story by Robert E. Howard for Red Sonja called Shadow of the Vulture or Sword of the Vulture. That's where
Isn't
Red
that the
Sonja's
first
from.
one? That's the first one, isn't it?
And then Red Sonja became big via,
She got her own.
Comics.
Yep.
She became very big.
So these are the figures. I've got Box Office Mojo here. At the time, it made 7 million.
Okay.
Domestic total. The budget, which is only estimated at 17.9 million, estimated. But I don't know whether IMDb do any sort of change to those dollars. But generally speaking, that's a pretty sort of average release, I think, you know.
And that's only 7 million
US domestic.
Yeah.
That's correct. It sits in the Swords and Sorcery box office rankings at 32. It is the 32nd most successful Swords and Sorcery film. Action heroine movies, 73. There's not a lot of low numbers in any of these as far as box office. But see, we've learnt that box office is quite often about the distributor and the amount of marketing and those sorts of things. Really, I think where the money would have been made, as you alluded to earlier, in the syndication, in the fact that you would have seen it 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, it was either Rage or Red Sonja on the telly or something, and the DVD market and the video VHS video market. They would have. I think they would have cleaned up in that field. In fact, De Laurentiis and those spaghetti westerns and that whole Italian sort of campaign on Hollywood, I think a lot of that money they would have made back in droves. Because for some reason they just seem to make really good cult films. Flash Gordon, Red Sonja, Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer, all very cult in nature.
They're like niche computer games. They feed that niche very well. They satisfy that niche audience.
Do you think it's got something to do with world building? They tend to build worlds well. The Flash Gordon, the spaghetti westerns, the Good, the Bad, the Ugly. They're very believable worlds. Whilst the acting in this, like I said earlier, there's a couple of ingredients in this cake that was a little dodgy. The acting is the one that I think let them down the most. That's my opinion.
I would say the writing.
The writing was iffy.
I think
especially the writing of the dialogue was very iffy. And that doesn't help when you've got shitty actors.
Yeah.
You can have iffy dialogue if you've got brilliant actors.
Yeah.
But if you don't have both of those things...
There's no chemistry between
Yeah.
some shots and at all.
So let's go around the table here. What was the thing that impressed you the most and disappointed you the most? Just one thing for each of those. Dan?
Costumes impressed me the most.
Yep.
And disappointed me the most was Red Sonja's pretty lame. You know, I was
As a
saying to you
hero.
at the start, you know, Arnie had some attitude, you know. He's like, I take what I want and I do this. And Red Sonja just seemed to be kind of lost most of the time. And I'm talking about the actor more than the character. So, yeah. That's it.
The set, probably the big thing. And to me, even though, because Red Sonja is actually a lot bigger character than what you see on the film. She's pretty much a female version of Conan. She's cynical, wisecracking, drinks heaps, kicks ass, takes no shit.
And we didn't really see any of that in there,
No,
did we? Right?
no. She was kind of quite, the character is quite ahead of her time.
Yeah.
But yes, but I think I was just happy that Red Sonja in some fashion was on film and it wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
But definitely the sets.
Tony?
I thought the animatronics were very good. For
Yeah.
Crocodile and also the spider, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
What let you down?
The other things.
That list,
the acting,
list is
the
extensive.
acting.
Yeah, the acting. For me, the thing that let me down the most was the music. Like, it just didn't fit. It was not right. And the fact that, and it made worse for me, was that how much respect I have for Morricone. I've got his albums. Like, there's not a lot of people around that collect music from Ennio Morricone, and I've got all of his stuff. And I was really disappointed.
Do you have this?
I do. No, I don't. Well, I might have on one of his best of and not realised it was for a Barbarian movie and thought it was for fucking Western or something.
Is it the editing? Was it his music and someone's done the editing?
I think it was the choice, the movement, like the notational movement that he came up with. So the composing, and then the choice of instruments and the choice of the composition of the music. It didn't fit. It didn't fit the genre. It was too upbeat. It was weird. It had some sort of angle to it. It wasn't right. Especially when you listen to the music for Conan. Yeah, it was very barocos and very big drums, and it was really barbarian. So the music let me down. The thing that I was most impressed with was production design, which is the costumes, the sets, the extensions, the set extensions, all of that stuff was brilliant. So from a production standpoint, I thought it was brilliant. So the music and the acting, you fix those two up for me, and this is
the story.
A real sort of connector for me as a film. All right, on our rating scale, burn, borrow, what was it? Buy, burn, or borrow? What do you give it?
Reading other people's feedback, it was either this is the worst movie ever made, or there was a bunch of other people who'd say, "Oh my God, this movie's the best! I saw it when I was a kid and I loved it then."
Yeah.
So I didn't see it when I was a kid when I loved it really then. So I'm like, burn it.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah. I have to agree. I would. If I happened to flick across and there was nothing else, I might watch 10 minutes of it, but I would tire of it within 10 or 15 minutes, and I'd have to watch something else because of the acting. Because we're so used to that, we've got so much to choose from nowadays that you can't put up with bad acting. You can put up with something that ages poorly, Buckaroo Banzai, things like that. Like that fits in a decade that it is no more, right? The outfits, the music, but at least the acting in it. I can't look at Buckaroo Banzai and go, "Geez, that was bad acting," right? Because you had
it wasn't bad acting. They didn't have bad acting.
You had John Lithgow in it. You had, there was some very good. I tell you this much: if there was no good acting in that film, no one would know about Buckaroo Banzai, right?
That's true.
It's the only thing that held it up. But what we can't do nowadays is put up with bad acting because we're sport for choice, and television has better acting than that. So yeah, for me, I would burn it as well.
Well, I actually own it on VHS, and I have to buy it.
Yeah, so it's a buy for you.
Yeah, definitely a buy for me.
Yeah, you've drunk the Kool-Aid.
Yep.
Burning seems harsh, but I couldn't recommend anybody to borrow it.
so it's on the wood pile. It's gone. All right, gentlemen, thank you for your attendance once again. And what have we got? Anything on the socials, Dan? I know that we've got a little bit of action happening on some of the socials.
Yeah, follow us on Voyage of the Geek on anything.
Just about anything.
Anything.
We
Voyage of the Geek.
We
Twitter.
broadcast live every fortnight around about the same time and around about the same
on
day.
YouTube.
YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook.
Yep.
And you can always catch us on a replay on YouTube, but also the podcast is on iTunes and Stitcher.
Yep.
Which, for my mind, is the best way to look at the show, to listen to to enjoy the show, because they don't have to look at us. So that's it for another week. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Say goodbye.
Goodbye from me.
Farewell.
Thanks, gentlemen.